Can you teach an old dog new tricks? Well, Bushmills certainly hope so. This is their Caribbean Rum Cask finished blended whiskey. Let me tell you about it in this week's review. Welcome back to the channel. I'm Matt, I'm the whiskey nerd, and like I said, this is the Bushmills Caribbean Rum Cask finished whiskey. So let me get it into the glass and I'll tell you a little bit more about it. Now, why did I call this an old dog? Well, this is actually, I think, just Bushmills' white label, their kind of white standard label, Bushmills, that's been given a Caribbean Rum Cask finish to try and elevate it a little bit and try and make it something a little bit more special. Now, the standard Bushmills white label is an alright label. It's definitely like among those kind of entry-level bottom shelf blends. And then there's quite a step up, I think, in terms of quality when you get to the black label, the Black Bushmills whiskey. It's very nice, uses a lot of sherried malt in it, and just kind of has, to me at least, a much rounder, much more flavorful profile than the standard white label Bushmills. So for this whiskey, Bushmills have taken their malt whiskey, which they distill themselves, and they've aged it, or finished it at least, in Caribbean rum casks that had held previously rum, unsurprisingly, from the Caribbean. This is a blended whiskey. Now, they don't say how much of the whiskey is made up of that malt that was finished in the Caribbean rum casks, so we don't really know a lot of information there. It was also blended with grain whiskey. Now, Bushmills don't make their own grain whiskey, so they probably sourced it from either Middleton, Cooley, or Great Northern Distillery, but they haven't disclosed where they get their grain whiskey from. So it's not the most transparent of whiskeys, but what's important is, of course, how it tastes. So this whiskey does come in at 40%, so it should be very approachable and very easy to drink. And as you can tell from the bottle, I have had a nice amount of it because it is actually a surprisingly easy to enjoy whiskey. And that's kind of unsurprising because the grain whiskey used in this was aged in bourbon casks, and if you are starting with a good quality grain whiskey, you can add a lot of flavors. Grain whiskey can be a good base where you can build a lot of flavors, so I think that's what they've done here. So let's go in for the nose on the Bushmills Caribbean Rum Cask finish. Okay, jumping out of the glass, you get these really nice fruity banana notes. So Bushmills, their malt whiskey, it's known for having these kind of fruity, funky notes that really do deliver a lot of kind of interesting notes, but they're not really present here. They may be a little present, but it's definitely leading up front with that rum influence, with that kind of tropical bananas, maybe a little bit of like candied pineapple. That kind of note does come through into the whiskey. There's also plenty of like that, as I was saying, that grain sweetness, that grainy vanilla. The grain was aged in bourbon cask, so it's going to take on a lot of those kind of butterscotch vanilla flavors, and that does come through here. It's actually kind of reminding me like a banana pudding or a banana custard, where you get that kind of creamy, custardy banana note, and that's just kind of what I'm getting here. Nice and approachable, nothing off, no real ethanol or any spiky notes that you do sometimes get with one of those entry-level whiskeys, but it's just a nice kind of easy to enjoy whiskey. As I sit with it, maybe getting a little bit of apples and maybe a little bit of oak, but do have to kind of go in a lot on the nose to get those. So I think it's about time I go in for the palate. Cheers. Okay, it is fruity up front, it is creamy again. I'm getting a lot more of that oak, kind of that oak spice presence on the palate than I was getting in the nose of the whiskey. Now, in terms of mouthfeel, it is not thin, but it's definitely not heavy. It's not like a really rich, thick, oily whiskey. I mean, it is coming in at 40%, so it's not going to be the heaviest, richest whiskey in your palate, but it does have a nice kind of flavor to it, even if the mouthfeel isn't all there. Yeah, that nice bit of spicy note, I wasn't really expecting it from the nose, but it does come through into the palate. So I'm going to go in for another sip. Cheers. Okay, second sip round, I definitely got that kind of Bushmills character. A lot of distilleries, they do have their own kind of specific DNA, their specific style, their specific flavors that you do get from their whiskey, and that is more apparent here on the palate of the Bushmills Caribbean finish. There is still that rum influence, there's still that tropically kind of banana, maybe a little bit of like a mango note, maybe I was saying on the nose, kind of like a candied pineapple note. On the palate, maybe a little bit like a mango. It's still kind of syrupy and dense there, but it's not overly sweet, it's not overly rich. It's just a nice, enjoyable, easy to drink whiskey. Again, there's no real sharp edges or bad notes or off notes in this whiskey, so I'm going to go in again, but we're going to focus on the finish, see how those flavors fade off, and then we're going to talk about the whole experience of this whiskey. Cheers. Okay, so again, up front, you get that fruitiness, you get that creaminess, you get that spiciness. And then the fruitiness, I think, lasts a little bit longer than that creamy note and the vanilla note. It's a little bit, as I said, that Bushmills funk, that kind of Caribbean tropical fruity notes. And then those fade away, leaving you with that little bit of oak. Like I said, not a huge heavy mouthfeel, so it's not hanging around forever. Those initial flavors, they do fade on. Like I still got the oak in my mouth. I had kind of oak spices lingering a little bit, but the rest of it has faded off pretty quickly. So it's a fairly short finish, but like I was saying, it's not an offensive finish. Like this is a surprisingly easy to enjoy whiskey. I mean, of the Bushmills lineup, their white label, it's not my favorite whiskey. Of the kind of entry level whiskeys, I would reach for something else before I reach for Bushmills, but this is definitely a very nice step up from those whiskeys. It's kind of, if you know Jameson and you know the stout finished Jameson, there's quite a step up there from just a simple little influence on the whiskey. That's what I think you're getting, the same kind of idea here, that you get that Bushmills, which is a solid whiskey, but it just made a fair bit better by the inclusion of that tropical rum cask finished malt whiskey in the blend. And yeah, there's nothing off about the whiskey. There's no ethanol notes, there's no spiky, harsh, bad notes, there's no nail polish remover, there's nothing like that. It's just an easy to enjoy whiskey. So if you're looking for maybe a new budget whiskey, if you're looking at, you've had the standard Bushmills, you've had the standard Jameson, you're looking at something that's a little bit different but still gonna be familiar, still gonna be easy to drink, and still gonna be kind of easy on the wallet, this is actually probably a fairly good option. So it's not gonna blow your mind, but at the same time it's not gonna blow your wallet, and it's an easy to enjoy whiskey. It's also very good to use in cocktails. So for example, this Friday I'm going to be putting out a cocktail, a tiki tropical cocktail featuring this whiskey, because I think it does work very well in those styles of drinks. So if you want to see that video, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because I put out whiskey cocktails on Fridays, I put out whiskey reviews on Wednesday. So if you want to see more, make sure you hit subscribe, and while you're down there, leave me a comment to say what kind of whiskey you'd like to see me review in future. But until next time, I'm going to keep on enjoying this, and I will see you then. Sláinte.